So to get us started, please join me in welcoming, take your last drink of water, Jason Lowe, Vericent's Chief Growth Officer.
Oh, don't you dare look back, just keep your eyes on me. I said you're holding back. She said shut up and dance with me. This woman is my...
Hey everyone. So as Nicole mentioned, I am Vericent's Chief Growth Officer. And as part of the Office of Growth, our charter is to find ways to identify insights, right, or signals that we can share with all of our clients, all of you, that can hopefully help you judge the growth strategies of your organizations. And one of the cool things about the Office of Growth is that we have an independent research arm of the business to help quantify these insights. And as part of that, we recently ran a study that we call the Inflection Point, where we surveyed hundreds of revenue leaders across geos and a dozen or so industries, and then we paired that with tons of interviews. Because with AI, like creeping into every nook and every cranny of all the business workflows that we're being asked to deliver on, we really wanted to see that is AI actually the hero of the story, or is it really just an accelerant of all the good work that our teams are doing today? And so we started by asking leaders that, look, when you sit down to make a go-to-market decision, like what are you actually drawing upon? And so we saw really answers fall into two categories or two sources. The first is what you would expect. They're drawing on things like pipeline data and commissionable sales data and revenue dashboards, activity reports. It's really the technical machinery that we've all learned to read and interpret to deliver on our businesses. But then right next to that, almost as frequently, leaders pointed to intangible things. Like they were looking at things like they're watching how their people respond when they roll out changes to a compensation plan, or they're seeing how people are reading between the lines when they're rolling out a new set of accounts. And so it's things like they're watching the informal conversations, the contextual clues. And it was the responses that are related to your people's judgment, right? Their context, their experience. It's those things that senior leaders saw as the secret sauce to the success of a lot of go-to-market plans. And so to use a metaphor, think of it like an iceberg, right? So the tip of the iceberg, that's the part of your work that everyone sees. It's visible across the organization. And below the surface, which candidly with an iceberg, which is where the real mass of an iceberg lives, is the stuff that's not seen, right? It's the intangibles. It's the stuff that only lives inside people's heads. And so which means these two sources of data, they scale very differently, right? Because above the line, that stuff scales with the company. But then below the line, that stuff only scales with the individuals themselves. And so we wanted to know, is there any way that the information that is below the line, right, is that any way that that's actually getting captured? And so part of our survey, we asked, how much does each planning cycle feel like we're building on lessons learned from last time versus how much does it feel like we're starting from scratch? And crazily, 80% said that, we're basically starting over every single time for every single planning cycle. 80%, that's a lot. And then we asked, well, okay, so when you're making a plan, you're at least placing a bet, right? You are defining what you expect to happen. How are you gonna know if the plan is successful? How are you drawing that line? And this was really to no surprise. 77% of people said that yes, for sure, they're always calling their shot. So we said, great, totally makes sense. So now let's fast forward a little bit in time, and let's say it's no longer the beginning of the year, but now you're wrapping up the next year. And then we asked, well, how many of you guys are actually going back in after the fact and checking your work and seeing if those underlying assumptions that you made at the beginning of the last period actually played out in the way that you hoped they would? Well, we asked that too. And it turns out actually fewer than 1 in 5 people said that they actually go back in after the fact to check. There's actually one story, one CRO really brought this to light for us when she told us that, look, I can tell you that I hit 103% last year, no problem. But what I can't tell you is which of those 8 things that I changed is actually the reason why we hit the number. And look, this isn't a effort problem. There's enough effort, but it's a signal problem. I mean, could it have been because that she hit her number of 103% because there were specific changes to the comp plan? Sure, right? But could it also be that they made adjustments or improvements from a product quality perspective? Or maybe is it because they did a shift in a route to market? And so those signals that we're all playing with, they're all tangled together. But the infrastructure to separate them really doesn't exist. And so you might say, okay, so if that's the problem, then what's the fix? And so it's really about closing the loop, right? Building a system that turns really every decision into a signal that the organization can actually learn from. And this was something that, look, while it's not common, the most advanced firms that we did interview, like the ones that are outperforming, the ones that are growing the fastest, that are exceeding their targets, they have developed ways to master this. And so, like I said, there are a lot of interesting things happening across all of our peers at other companies. We've covered certainly many more interesting learnings and candidly several idiosyncrasies. And if you're inclined, you can download the entire report from the QR code on our screen. But here's the deal, right? Our teams, we're getting smarter every year, but the processes that surround us aren't, right? We're not learning from them, and it's not helping you as a leader, and it's certainly not helping your organizations. And so until that feedback loop gets built, it never will. But good news is that the firms that are winning, right, the firms that are not waiting for it to be perfect, but they are starting now. And they are, and I think that for the rest of us, I think as we're all on this experimentation journey, I think we're all closer than we probably realize. And luckily, there are a wealth of resources that we can all lean on to start making all of this happen, including, of course, the many flavors of AI.